Hey, good morning, everybody. How we doing? So there's this little Jesus figure who shows up all over the place in our building, and he's right here in front of me today. So anyway, threw me off when I looked down there. Hey, welcome. Glad you are with us on this Sunday morning. I want to bring your attention to something that is happening this evening. We have our partnership night from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We're going to be here in this space. Hope you can join us. Some people have asked, who's supposed to come to this partnership night? Real quick, let me tell you who it is. It's people who are partners. It's people who think they're partners or not sure if they're partners. We'd love for you to be here. It's for people who have questions about partnership or want to know more about partnership. So basically, all of you are invited to be here this evening. I think right now we have about 90 people that are signed up. So you can still sign up. You have till noon today to do that. So I hope you will sign up and be a part of that. We have childcare this evening. That's why we need to know you're coming. We also have desserts that we are sharing. So looking forward to having those with you. But should be a really, really good time. I'll even throw a little bit extra in here. I know in the midst of the partnership class, there's a pretty big event. There's a big football game between the Cowboys, Commanders. I'm a Cowboys fan. Wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and make my bet, all right? I've so far been right every single year. This might be the first one where I actually lose. But Cowboys over Commanders. Cowboys win. Commanders fans have to give a little bit extra offering next week. That's how we do this. Cowboys lose, then I wear a Commanders jersey or shirt next Sunday when I preach, and I will be preaching unless I get sick and won't be here. But anyway, if you want to see me sweat for an hour and a half, come tonight and be a part of that, but you need to sign up for that. Other thing is, at the end of our time this morning, we're going to move all these chairs out. We've got tables we're going to bring in. Somebody's going to tell everybody what to do. If you can stick around, now go get your kids. Please do that because we don't want them mad at us downstairs. But grab your kids. But if you can come and help us move these chairs and put these tables up, that would be great because we want to prep for this evening, okay? The other thing that I want to bring to your attention that you already know is happening. Gary talked about this a little bit earlier. We were in the midst of this furlough, and I know that is affecting quite a few of you, your friends, this community. I know it's all over the place. Or some aren't working, some are working double, some are working half-time. All of you, except some of you this week got paid. We're hoping that doesn't continue on. I want you to know that we care. We love you. We want the best for you. We want to support you as a church. And so if there are needs that you have, whether they're financial needs, food needs, resource needs, counseling needs, there's this email address here, care@thejourneynova.org. You can shoot us an email and just let us know what you need. We will contact you, see what we can do to help you in this time. Because again, we know this affects so many that are part of our church and our community, and we want to do the best we can to make sure we are here for you, okay? With that kind of in mind, I actually want to stop for a second and just say a prayer for this community and those of you that are furloughed right now before we go on. God, sometimes we don't quite get why things turn out the way they do and happen the way they do. And God, I know there's moments we can all be frustrated and angry and upset. But these are also moments where we can be encouraging and support for one another. And so, God, for those that are here in our church that are affected by this furlough, may in some way there be peace in these moments, knowing that you are in control of everything in this world. And maybe we've got questions about this, but at the same time, God, you are our Lord. You are everything. And so I pray that we can put our trust in you and find that peace that we need in times like this. God, I pray as a church we will come around to each other and support each other and encourage and be present and share the resources that we have with people that may be in need. Let us live out what it means to be a follower of Christ in times like this. And so, God, we lift up this community. We lift up those in our church that are being furloughed right now. Again, may we just find peace and strength through you and through each other. In Jesus' name, amen. Back in 2006, there was a book that was written, and in it there was some data about the amount of words that the average man and the average woman speaks every single day. The number for women was 20,000 words per day, and the number for men was 7,000 words per day, which we all agree is true, right? Women are chatterboxes and men are lumps on a log, right? Well, some people are like, this doesn't seem right. There was a researcher by the name of James Pennebaker, and he said, I'm kind of skeptical of this. So he did his own research. So over the next 10 years, he did this research, and what he found was that those numbers weren't right. What he found was that men and women actually say, on average, the same amount of words every single day. That number is 16,000. So every single day, all of us in this room, we say about 16,000 words. When you're saying 16,000 words every single day, you are probably going to say some words that you regret, right? Because we know that words are powerful, and we know that there are words that we say that have an effect on other people, that words can be harmful. In fact, if we look back at our lives, we've been shaped by words. We've been shaped by words that have been said to us, about us, over us. I mean, words have power. They've shaped our childhood. They've shaped our dating relationships. They've shaped our marriages. They've shaped how we parent. They've shaped how we work in the work world. Words are powerful. And so we have to be reminded that they carry different weight when we say them, because they do have the power to hurt. Think about words in this way. Words are not equally weighted. If you say one negative word to someone and you say a positive word to someone, the same person, they're not going to say these are equal, are they? A guy named John Gottman did some research. He found the ratio is actually 5 to 1. For every one negative interaction you have with someone, you need 5 positive interactions to equal that one negative interaction. Words don't have the same weight when they are said. Negative words cause more harm, are harder to get over than positive words. But then there's the source of our words. The source of our words are not equally weighted. What your boss says to you is weighted differently than what the receptionist says to you. What your parents say to you is weighted differently than your cousin's, uncle's, brother's, best friend's aunt, right? Words have different weights based on the source and who says those words to us. But then there's the recovery time. There's recovery time from words that are spoken to us, and those aren't equally weighted too. If someone you don't know says something negative to you, there's going to be this moment where you're going to feel bad about what's happened. You might be hurt, but you might get over that. If it's a parent or it's a close friend, a family member, those words from a person like that that's important to us, that we care about, that maybe we even love, that recovery time can be so much longer. Because words hurt and words linger. Words have different weights in our lives. And so when we think about the words that we say, how do we control our words, right? How do we control the most powerful part of our bodies, which is our tongue? Now, I'll give you a little bit of a backdrop to this. It goes back to James chapter 1, where we were last week. We're in this series on the book of James. We've broken it into 3 different sections. And right now we're in this 4-week section. We're talking about the words that we say. And today we're going to talk about the power of those words that we say. But last week as we started, we were in James 1. And James says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And so with that kind of as the backdrop for today, we're going to talk about the power of words as we head into James chapter 3. And we're going to spend all of our time there this morning in James chapter 3, starting with verse 1. James says, dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. There are no words in Scripture that haunt me more than these words right here from James. Like when this is your job, and this is what you do, and you stand up in front of people and you teach, like these words mean something here. But there's a reason James brings this up right here. If you were a teacher in the early church, it meant you had authority, all right? You had this position, this role, and power is not the right word, but you had this authority over the people that you were teaching to. And so your words carried weight. So what you said meant something. And if you were saying one thing, if you were teaching one thing, and you were living your life a different way, people would look at that and like, well, hold up a second. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to follow? Because here's this person who's saying this, who supposedly has this authority, but they're acting and living very differently. And so there was this authority there with these words. And if they told you something, you're like, well, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do because these words are coming from that person. But there's also prestige in this position. Probably comes out of the Jewish faith. Remember, James's audience, they're Jewish Christians, okay? So they have been Jewish their whole life, grown up in Judaism. They believe Jesus is the Messiah. So now they're following Jesus. So they still have that strong backing of their Judaism that's there. In the Jewish faith, rabbis were looked up to. They were very important, maybe to a fault, within this faith structure. And so they carried this role of prestige. So if you were a teacher in the early church, you could easily get caught up in the power of that position. And here's James, who starts out in James chapter 3 and says, hey, this role that when you teach in the church, whatever that may look like, it can be dangerous, that there's this incredible responsibility that you have in that position. And if you weren't careful as a teacher, you could get caught up in that. You could get caught up in the power and the prestige more than the purpose of the role. So here's James in James 3. He's like, hey, you can't take this lightly, right? If you're teaching a church, it's very important. It's an important task. Some of you, you're not cut out for this. Some of you, we know you. You don't need to be in that role at all. There's consequences to what you say. So he starts out in kind of this forceful nature. But then look at verse 2. He says, indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. So James kind of begins piggybacking on verse 1. It's like, hey, teachers make mistakes. Right? Sometimes teachers get up and they say things and they're kind of dumb. They make mistakes. Someone who does this again for a living, yes, that is true, and I agree with him here. But then he brings us all together. He talks about the power of our words and that this is an issue for all of us. And in fact, what he says here really points us back to James 1, where he briefly says, watch what you say. And here in James 3, he's expanding on that same idea. Watch what you say, because your words have the power to influence everything and everyone in your life. But then he goes in and he gives some examples. Look at verse 3. He says, we can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. This is a photo of our oldest daughter, Savannah. She has been riding horses since she was, for 13 years, so since she was about 10 years old. Parents, let me just warn you of something. This started on a pony ride at what used to be the Reston Petting Zoo. She wanted to ride the horse. We said yes, and her lifelong goal has been to own her own horse, right? And so she owns her own horse. That's a goal she's had for her life that her parents had no desire to help her with. So it's her horse on her own. She's married now and has our grandkid, and they live out in Oregon. So we don't get to see the horse or them much at all. But this is like the epitome first. She loves that this is her horse. James says here that controlling the tongue, that it's so important. It's like putting a bit in the horse's mouth. The control comes from that. When Savannah was learning to ride at the age of 10 and starting up, here's this little tiny kid who would take this metal bit and put it in the horse's mouth. And horses love that, don't they? It is like their favorite thing in the world. They're like, please put this metal bit in my mouth. Actually, horses hate it. They're trying to push it out, do anything they can to get rid of it. And so I would watch Savannah, this little tiny kid, try to put this bit in the horse's mouth, and she would do it with the horse pushing back. Once she got it in there, this little kid who weighed nothing would jump on the back of this 1,100-pound horse, and that horse would go anywhere she wanted it to go because she had the bit in the mouth and it controlled the horse. Maybe something a little bit more relevant for many of you here. This is the USS Theodore Roosevelt. It's a very large ship, as you can tell. Some of you may have been on the ship before. Some of you may have lived on the ship before. Some of you may have commanded parts of this ship before. It's big. It's a little over 1,000 feet long, which is about as tall as the Empire State Building is high. In the water, it weighs over 100,000 tons. There are 4 engines on this ship that give it about 300,000 horsepower to go where it needs to go. But one of the things about this ship that are so impressive is there are 2 rudders on the ship. 29 feet high by 22 feet long. Each weighs about 50 tons apiece. And so you think about the size of these rudders and you think about the size of this ship. I mean, those rudders are pretty small to maneuver this big ship wherever it needs to go. Here's James who's saying, hey, it just takes something small to change everything. It takes something small to control just a little bit of your life, and it can change and steer your life in so many different ways. He even talks about this in verse 5. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. He takes those examples. He says the tongue is small, but it can make these great, incredible, influential speeches by what it says. That's the power it has. That's the power it has to steer lives. Thomas Lay was a writer, and he did a commentary on the books of Hebrews and James. And he wrote this. He says, like the bit for the horse and the rudder for the ship, the tongue is small in relation to the body, and yet has powerful potential to achieve great results, both good and bad. It can stir up violence or promote peace. It can crush the spirit or soothe the discouraged. If the tongue could personally express itself, it could legitimately boast of its great exploits. I read these words from Lay here, and I'm thinking, I think this explains the power of the tongue so well. That one moment it can do good, and the next it can harm. It can stir violence. It can promote peace. It can crush someone's soul, or it can encourage the discouraged. The tongue is small relative to our bodies, but it's very powerful. How powerful can it be? Look at the rest of verse 5. But a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. The word forest that's used there, the Greek word, is actually brush. And in those Palestinian hills, there's a lot of dry brush, especially during the dry season. So a spark could start a fire that could burn thousands and thousands of acres of land. It could bring about incredible destruction. This is something that's not unfamiliar to many of us. Back in 2018, there was a terrible fire in California known as the Camp Fire. Lasted 17 days, destroyed over 153,000 acres of land, destroyed about 18,000 structures, did $16.5 billion in property damage, and 85 people lost their lives during that fire. It's interesting to me, at the end of the first service, a young lady came out. She said, hey, that started in Paradise, California, and that's exactly where I'm from. So I was talking to her about that, and she's like, it still hasn't gotten back to where it was before because of the destruction of that particular fire. What was the cause? It was a spark. It was a spark from a power line that initiated a brush fire that brought about this kind of destruction. Here's James, who one moment says, hey, your tongue, your words have the power to give these great speeches, right? But at the same time, it has the power to destroy lives. And he continues with that idea in verse 6. He said, and among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. There's really kind of three things James is talking about here in this verse. First, the tongue can corrupt the whole person, that our tongues can pollute our entire personality. Maybe you know people in your life that as you listen to the words they say, you're like, that describes you. Like you understand who they are because their words are so caustic and hurtful, and you look at them like your personality fits your words because our tongue can corrupt a whole person. Our words also have the power to set our lives. Talking about the cycle of life. Some of us have incredible struggles right now, just as individuals, maybe in relationships, in marriage, because of words our parents said to us many years ago. Like the words that our parents have said have set the cycle for our life, and we're who we are today because of those words that were told to us that can set our lives. But then our words can be influenced by evil that's around us. Man, I don't think this is more true than today. Like we look around us and, we think about evil, we think of some deep, dark, sinister stuff. Sometimes it's just harmful words. It's hateful words that people say to other people. And we can get caught up in that very, very easily. And our words begin to harm people because we get stuck in, as I said here, this evil that's there. We can use our words to hurt more than help. And so James is saying, hey, your words can be influenced by the things that are happening around you. Your words are powerful, and they have the power to affect other people. And not just affect other people, but they have the power to affect the whole person. When you were a kid, let's say you said something you shouldn't have said to your parents. Did your mom or dad say, hey, mouth, right? Like mouth, go sit in the corner, but the rest of the body, you can go outside and play. You're good. It's not how it works, right? Now, when you get in trouble because of something you say, then the whole body gets punished. That is exactly what James is getting at here. That what we say doesn't just affect our mouth, it affects our whole person. The spark of our words can create a fire that destroys everything around us, including ourselves. We're responsible for the words we say and the effect of those words. Let's go back to that fire that I was talking about there in California. It came from some equipment from the Pacific Gas and Electric Company. They didn't mean to start the fire. I know that's a song. I'm not trying to be funny here, but there you go, just in case you were thinking that. But it cost them something. In January 2019, they filed for bankruptcy due to the fire. The spark started, this fire spread, the damage occurred, and guess who was responsible for that destruction? They were. Think about our words. Think about what our tongues have the power to destroy. It can destroy friendships. It can blow up marriages. It could tear down the relationship we have with the parents. It can end careers. Because words affect everything. They affect our intimacy, the interactions we have, our health, our minds, our souls, everything. Our words are a spark that can destroy everything around us. We can't separate our words from the results that happen. These things are combined together. And so when we say something that we regret, many times we'll say, or just make some excuse for the words that we've said. We'll say something like, man, I was just joking with you. Or, I was just being honest, or I was just mad, I'm sorry for that, or I was just drunk, or I didn't mean it. And so we'll make excuses and treat the words that come from our lips as some sort of accident. And then we'll act surprised when that excuse that we make doesn't get returned back as, oh yeah, no problem at all, but we get anger back to us, or we get words back to us, or people get up and they walk away because of what we said. It's like, wow, how did this happen? Because this isn't what I meant. Now granted, the words you said may have been an accident, but you said them. And you and I are responsible for the fire that comes from that spark. I think that's why it's so important to go back to what James said last week. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. The spark of our words can destroy so much around us. Then look at verse 7. It says, people can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. James isn't done, right? He's laying on thick again. He's talking about taming animals. He's like, for millennia, we have tamed animals. We have subdued animals. And except for maybe some apes in the future, it's a pretty good idea that nothing's going to take over humanity, right? Animals aren't going to take over. He says, we've tamed all these things, but we still haven't figured out the tongue. We don't know how to subdue the tongue. We don't know how to tame the tongue. The tongue is untamable. It's almost like we need, like on songs today, it's got the little E on it. Maybe we need some of that on our tongues to remind people, hey, this thing is dangerous. Sometimes it can be explicit. Sometimes it can say things that hurt and harms. And so watch out for the tongue. Then he continues on, verse 9. It says, sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. And so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Now, James is referring to something here that was very familiar to his Jewish Christian audience. In those days, when the name of God was mentioned, you had to respond to that with these words, blessed be he. Now, they're talking about God here. And so James is hearing these people walking around saying, blessed be he, every time God's name is said. And so there's this praise towards God. And yet he's like, but the next moment you're out there cursing your neighbor. I said this last week. Has anything changed in 2,000 years? Like, I don't think we're any different today, are we? That many of us say, hey, I'm a follower of Jesus. And then one moment we're showing compassion to a stranger. And the next we go home and we snap at the smallest thing that's not right with our kids or with our marriage. Or we'll be here on a Sunday morning and we'll speak Christianese to everybody around us. And then we'll go to work tomorrow and we'll curse out our team for something that went wrong. Or maybe we're in a small group, and in our small group, we're encouraging the people that are there, and yet we'll go home and destroy another person's reputation through gossip, right? This is what we tend to do. On the one hand, we're like, hey, I'm going to praise God, and I'm going to follow Jesus, and yet on the other, we can cause incredible harm through the words that we say. John Bunyan was a 17th century English writer and a Puritan preacher. He put it this way. He said he was a saint abroad and a devil at home. Can't 1 minute talk about love for God and then the next use hurtful words to others. And so James is seeing this happening, right? And look at that last line there. He says, surely, brothers and sisters, this is not right. Like, he's serious about this. He's like, you can't do this. You can't be a follower of Jesus. You can't say that you love God. You can't be praising God one moment and then the next moment letting these harmful, hurtful words come out of your mouth towards others. You can't be tearing down other people or insulting them or being profane. You can't be a saint and a devil at the exact same time. And I kind of imagine he's sitting there saying, what are you doing? But then he continues on. Verse 11. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No. And you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. He talks about fresh water and bitter water. That term bitter there in the Greek is actually brackish. And many of us are probably familiar with brackish water. And he says those waters don't come from the same springs. The brackish water doesn't come from fresh water, and fresh water doesn't come from brackish water. They can't do that. That's not how nature works. Water is consistent in its nature and where it comes from. Again, we can't celebrate Jesus one moment and then the next curse someone out. And so James is like, if you're doing this, something's wrong inside. Something's off. Something's not the way that it should be. That you should be a fresh water, and it should be producing fresh water. You shouldn't be trying to be fresh water and brackish water at the same time. You can't do that. That's not how we work. That's not how God has created us to be. That we will produce words based on what's actually inside of us. And so if we're producing brackish water, right, we're producing harmful words that are coming out of our mouth, that's really what's inside of us. We talked about this last week. Jesus in Luke chapter 6 says, what you say flows from what is in your heart. We talked about what's planted in us, and hopefully that's God's Spirit. And if God's Spirit is planted in us, then we're not going to spew out brackish water. We're going to watch what we say. We're going to guard what we say because we want to know, or we know that deep inside of us there is God's Spirit that is moving and challenging us in the words that we say. And in fact, he takes a little bit farther and he talks about what it produces in us, right? A fig tree produces figs. An olive tree produces olives. Grapevines produce grapes. Again, nature's consistent. Nature does what nature's supposed to do. But oftentimes when it comes to our words, our tongue is not consistent with who we say we are. Because what we say is being produced from what's inside of us. It's at this point, James kind of finishes. He's kind of done. And so he doesn't really give us any next steps like, hey, here's some good next steps you should take in this. So taking this passage of what we just read and kind of thinking about what we talked about last week, let me give you 4 things that I think are important when it comes to understanding the power of our tongue. The first one is this: remember the power of your words. Many times when we think about power, we think about weapons, we think about muscles, we think about money, we think about titles. The truth is, what's most powerful are the words that we say. Think about what words have done. They've started wars. They've ended companies. They've destroyed careers. They've damaged families. And yet at the same time, words have ended wars, built companies, restored careers, and brought amazing healing within families. We need to remember our words have power. And if we say we follow Jesus, then that means the words that come from our mouth should be healthy and whole and encouraging. I love what Paul says in Colossians 4. He says, let your conversation be gracious and attractive. That word attractive there, actually in the Greek, means seasoned with salt, so that you will have the right response for everyone. Like, we need to remember that our words have incredible, incredible power to harm, but hopefully to heal. So why not use words that are gracious and full of salt? So remember the power of words. But the other thing we need to do is to surrender our words to God. I said this a little bit earlier. If you say 16,000 words every single day, you are probably going to say some things that you regret. But the thing is, if we are called to follow Jesus and if we are a follower of Christ, then our words should be different. We have to be reminded, as I said last week, who we follow. Right? Whose we are, what's planted in us, because our words reflect not just what our mouths are saying, but reflect us as a whole person. We need to give ourselves as living and holy sacrifices, and that includes the tongue. Paul talks about that in Romans 12. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice. And being a living and holy sacrifice means all of us. It doesn't mean we separate the tongue from every other piece of us. No, it's our whole body. It's who we are. We need to learn to surrender our words to God. Every single week, I try to take a few moments in prayer time just say, hey, God, this is yours. Right? What I'm going to say on a Sunday morning, what I'm going to put together is I'm working on this message. I want this to be from you, partly because James 3:1 terrifies me, as I said a little bit earlier, but also because I don't want to use this position that I have here as a way to gain power or prestige. That's not what I'm in this for. I'm in it to share what God's word says, and hopefully share something that you and I can take and use in healthy ways in our life. And so it's like, hey, God, I'm going to surrender this to you. I pray that we all do that. That it's not just being in a role of teaching within a church setting. It's in everything that we do, that we surrender our words to God, because our words have influence. They influence people at home, at work, at school, maybe the clubs we belong to, the restaurants we go to, the grocery stores we frequent. We need to learn to surrender our words because in the end, they affect everything around us. And so don't just remember the power of words, but surrender your words to God. And then I would also say confess when you mess up with your words. We're going to say some things that we're going to regret. And it's not a question of if we're going to do it. It's when we're going to do this. And we're going to want to take those words back because they're going to create hurt and pain within relationships that we have in our life. But we need to remember the power of our words. We need to surrender those words to God and then learn to confess when we say things that hurt other people. We don't need to try to explain why we said them. We don't need to make excuses for what we said. We don't need to complain and say, well, you didn't really understand what I was trying to tell you. We don't need to act like nothing happened. When it comes to our words, if we say things that are wrong and hurtful to other people, maybe even about someone to other people, we need to be willing to come in and say, hey, I need to confess to you. And it's not just hey, I need to confess to you. I said some things. Will you forgive me? It's, hey, I need to confess to you. Here's exactly what I said, and I acknowledge that. Or, hey, here's what I said to someone else about you, and I need you to know that, and I want to confess that to you, and I'm asking for your forgiveness. It's so hard to do. So hard to do. But I believe it's a powerful way to make sure our relationships are where they need to be, and also to make sure that we're living the life that we're called to live if we're a follower of Christ. That we can say, this is what I'm sorry for. This is exactly what I said. Will you forgive me? Now, however long it takes for them to forgive us is up to them. Remember I said a little bit earlier about recovery time? If you're really close to this person and those words are really harsh, it may take them a while to say, yeah, I forgive you. But at that point, we've done exactly what we were called to do. And they were called to actually watch what we say from then on and not keep the cycle that's going. But we not only need to remember our words and surrender our words, we need to confess them when we mess up and we hurt other people. And then lastly, when it comes to talking about our words, we're talking about what's said, and we're also talking about what we write or post. Some of you are here right now and you're thinking, hey, I'm in good shape because the words come out of my mouth, they're great, right? They're clean. I never say anything bad. We can go to your Facebook page or your Instagram page or whatever page it is that you use, and we could probably see a different story for some of us, right? Because when we get our fingers going after something we've read, something somebody's posted, or some idea that we have, or some feeling we have about something, man, we can get pretty angry. And when we're not face-to-face with someone, isn't it a whole lot easier to be more mean, to be more vicious towards those who believe differently than us, or think differently than us, or vote differently than us? Look, if you're a follower of Jesus, it's not just the words that come out of your mouth that have power. It's the words that you write and you post and you put out there, fighting other people or giving your own opinion about stuff. And I'm not saying you can't give opinions. But sometimes we do it with incredible anger and hate. And that's not who we're called to be. We're called to a much different life than that. As we look at this passage here in James, James is saying, if God has truly changed your heart, if you've been transformed through following Jesus, then we actually should see fruit through the words we speak. A renewed heart produces pure speech, and pure speech is a product of a renewed heart. If we think about the power we have with those 16,000 words that we use every single day, maybe we need to ask ourselves the question, is my heart being renewed by Jesus? And if so, then people will see that through the words that I say. Thankfully, we're forgiven, right? Thankfully, there's a God who loved us so much and said, hey, I'm going to send my son Jesus to this earth to show you what forgiveness is all about, to show you that you can live a different life, that you can be different, that the words that come out of your mouth, they don't have to be like the world's words. They can be words that have been planted in you because of my spirit in you, because you follow Jesus. And so this morning, as we come to this time of communion, may that be a reminder to us that God has this incredible love for us, that even when we mess up with our words, there's a God who forgives us. And hopefully, we can be a people who forgive others when they mess up with their words. And hopefully, there are people that will forgive us because of the words that we've spoken. And maybe the connection there is through Jesus Christ.